We are back with episode 6 of the Crown Jewels. What are the Crown Jewels? The Crown Jewels are the best sounding records in my collection. Throughout this calendar year, I'm going to be going through my collection, selecting what I feel are the best sounding records in my collection, putting out separate videos for 50 different titles. I want to talk about the 1984 album from the Pretenders, Learning to Crawl. Where did they get that title? Chrissie Hynde had a newborn baby. Father, a little factoid, is Ray Davies or Davis. Mazzy says Davis. Everybody else says Ray Davies. For another debate. So that's where the title came from. This is a very cool album. It could be my favorite Pretenders album. I started with an original US pressing that I've had for several years now. It's an Allied pressing. There is the band as they were comprised at that point in time. I think most people know the history here. In 1982, Chrissie Hynde kicked out the bass player, Pete Farndon, for drug abuse, just not able to function, basically. She wanted to put out a new Pretenders album and found it increasingly difficult to put together a rhythm section for rehearsals or jam sessions because she was working on songs all the time. So Pete Farndon was kicked out of the band. 2 days after he was kicked out of the band, James Honeymoon Scott, the incredibly gifted lead guitar player who really shines on that debut album and then the second album as well, he died of a drug overdose, accidentally. And Farndon, eventually succumbed to a drug overdose the next year, 1983. So Chrissie, kind of in a state of shock, her and Martin Chambers, they wanted to put down a song that they had been working on that James Honeymoon Scott actually had sat in on some jam sessions and maybe some early structural ideas on how to put that song together. That song was Back on the Chain Gang. And it was eventually released as a single in September of 1982. They went into Air Studios in London. That's the studio that George Martin famously started. It was originally on Oxford Circus on the fourth floor of an old department store. And incredibly great sounding studios. I think they had 2 different live rooms. Chris Thomas was producing. Steve Churchyard was the engineer on that session, and then on the follow-up sessions when they eventually came up with the rest of the material for the album. They recruited Billy Bremner, who was a guitarist with Rockpile. He came in and performed lead guitar on Back in the Chain Gang. And then the B-side, they also cut My City Was Gone, a great, great song. And bass was held down by Tony Butler of Big Country. Big Country just happened to be recording at Air Studios. And this was very much kind of a patch session, let's get this song down really quickly while we still have the inspiration, because Chrissie Hynde was so happy with that song, although she wasn't in a happy state of mind due to what was going on with her band. So they laid that track down along with My City Was Gone in July of 82, released it as a single in September of 1982. That's interesting because Learning to Crawl did not come out until January of 84. I think they played 4 or 5 songs from this record the following summer in 83 at the US Fest. And you can find that performance on YouTube. I actually think they did like an hour set. Pretty interesting. For an original US pressing, it sounds pretty good. I will tell you that there is a bit of sibilance present on a couple of songs. Most, the one that comes to mind for me is 2,000 Miles. There, for whatever reason, there's a little bit of sibilance on that track, and it's kind of noticeable. So I always wanted to kind of seek out a better pressing of the record. And during the pandemic, I picked up the Mobile Fidelity version of the record, which is a 33 RPM. I think this was originally released in 2012. I actually have number 4,580. Who knows how important those numbers are? Um, this was re-pressed. I think it must have been in either 2020 or 2021. And I picked up a copy direct from, I think I went right to the Mobile Fidelity website and picked up this copy. This thing sounds absolutely incredible. It's mastered by Kurt Wunderlich, and a lot of people will say that he has his own kind of signature and own kind of sound. Now, remember, 2021, was it 21 or 22 when we got the basic, when we got MoFi Gate? And a lot of people were pleasantly surprised to find out that this is one of the few copies, this is one of the few albums that they actually maintained a AAA chain. So this is an all analog cut from the master tapes to the lathe, and it sounds absolutely incredible. It is really cut quite hot. I will say that it is an experience to listen to this record. Now, first of all, the recording and the engineering on this album was so great. They had something really good to work from. Now, in 2012, who knows what the condition of those tapes were, but they must have been pretty well preserved because this record, the hallmarks of this record, I'm jumping around. The original pressing, everything is there that you would ask for. You get really good bass. There is a pretty good soundstage on that original pressing. The drum sounds are absolutely incredible. Martin Chambers is he was kind of a showy drummer, although I think is he back with the Pretenders now? I can't keep up. He was kind of a showy drummer, and he actually had a run-in at the end of the Learning to Crawl tour with Chrissie. Chrissie kicked him out of the band. She didn't think he was kind of up for the task, and was maybe tired of his kind of showboating drum style. But I'll tell you what, some of the drum sounds on this record are absolutely fantastic. And that particular song I was thinking about with the just incredible drum sounds is "Time the Avenger" on side one. And Chambers also, particularly on that track, he's like a human metronome. And let's not forget that great drum fill opening that he has for Learning to Crawl. Now, this record, it all comes down to several different songs for me. There's Learning to Crawl. There, of course, is Back in the Chain Gang. I love the chiming guitars, the layered guitars between Billy Bremner and Chrissie. And I know that Bremner uses a Telecaster for almost everything that he does, and so does Chrissie, but they must have had a Rickenbacker out for that opening chiming riff that they have, the opening stanza into Back in the Chain Gang. What a great song. Now, I also love side two. We get that opening track on side two, Thumbelina, and it is a real throwback rockabilly rollicking song. Chrissie Hynde, just her voice is so incredible. And the performances on this record are just top notch. Case in point, Thin Line Between Love and Hate with Paul Carrick on piano. That is one of the best Chrissie vocals on any album that she's put out. An amazing song. And I don't care if it was a cover, but it was a well-chosen cover and a great performance. So let's talk now about 2,000 Miles, kind of that Christmas themed song that turned out to be a pretty big hit. I think they released it as a single as well. The sibilance is absolutely present, even more so on this Mobile Fidelity pressing. That's the only drawback on this particular pressing is you've got really present sibilance on 2,000 miles. If you can get past that, I highly recommend this pressing. Like I said, it's kind of a roller coaster ride. Kurt Wunderlich, I think he set the dials to 11 on this thing when he cut this, and like I said earlier, it's cut hot. It sounds great. The bass is just huge. The soundstage is huge. It's an elevated listening experience. So now I want to talk about, I actually came across the Quiex II limited edition pressing back from 1984. This was an electro sound pressing. A lot of those Quiex IIs from the 80s were done at the electro sound pressing plant for whatever reason. There is that Quiex II label. If you ever see that out in the wild for any record that came out in the 80s into maybe the early 90s, make sure you buy that, because if you don't know, Quiex II was a special higher quality vinyl compound. You know, some people call it version vinyl, clarity vinyl, whatever. It was put out so that the early promo copies, and you can see that this is also a gold stamped promo, they wanted these things to sound absolutely incredible for the reviewers, for the DJs, for people in the business who got those records. So they did a limited run on Quiex II. And I am not kidding you. I will tell you that the best pressing that I have of Donald Fagen's The Nightfly, no, I don't have the one step. It's the Quiex II. And there are many others that kind of fall into that category. So if you ever see that label, make sure you pick up those copies. Okay, this sounds really, really good. It's not as amped up as the Mobile Fidelity pressing. Maybe that's a good thing. Don't know. It's a very enjoyable listening experience. It seems to be cut a little hotter than the original US Winchester that I have. And believe it or not, the sibilance issue on 2,000 miles is a lot less present than it is on the Mobile Fidelity pressing. So this is going to stay in my collection, but I'll just kind of end here and tell you that this is a great sounding record, even if you just have a US original or a UK original. The issue that you might run into is surface noise. So on the Allied pressing, I have present surface noise, which is unacceptable. That's why I kind of went down this path and found other copies. So if you do have a clean early US or UK, you're in good luck. It probably sounds pretty good to you. But if you can find a Quiex, and if you can find the Mobile Fidelity pressing, even better. You just have to get past the sibilance on 2,000 miles. Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate all of the comments, all of the views. Please consider subscribing if you like the content. It just kind of helps my channel grow. And thanks to Chrissie for being kind of the creative force behind the Pretenders. She is still going strong. And she is one of the gifts that we have when we think about rock and roll. Take care, everybody.